Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second day of the 13th annual Patient Reported Outcome Workshop. Thank you so much for your attendance. My name is Scottie Kern. I'm the Executive Director of the eCOA Consortium, and I have the privilege of kicking off day two of the event today. Thanks. May we extend, first of all, sincerest thanks to everyone that was able to join us yesterday. We hope you found the sessions both informative and stimulating. We had an excellent, very impressive attendance numbers indeed, with well in excess of 400 individuals joining us. We benefited yesterday from an update on the PRO Consortium's activities across the various working groups, an update from our colleagues at the FDA, and a thoughtful discussion on meaningful within-person change thresholds. But today's events, they shift to a slightly more electronic focus and the electronic aspects of clinical outcome assessment data capture. So we'll begin with a very brief overview of the eCOA Consortium and talk in a bit more depth about our collaborative initiative with the PRO Consortium, the Getting Better Together initiative, before what will, I'm quite certain, be a particularly vibrant discussion around digital health technologies. But before we kick off with the main material, we'd like to revisit some of the housekeeping pieces, if we may, to remind you that all attendee lines are muted during the workshop. The workshop is being recorded and the recordings will be made public on the PRO Consortium webpage by the end of May. If you have a technical issue, please use the chat feature, and T and the team at c-path will deal with whatever is getting in the way of you enjoying the content today. From a questions and answer perspective, we just want to re-stress what was discussed yesterday, that we really want to hear you deliver your questions where there are Q&A sections within the presentation. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. T and the c-path team will ensure that your question is put before the respondents in order that your hand was raised. Please do not use the chat feature for your questions. We want to hear you. We want you to interact. Also important to make sure that once you've asked your question, please take your hand down and put yourself back on mute. And also, we'd also ask if you could try as much as possible to limit your questions to just one, to make sure that everyone who's in attendance gets an opportunity to put their questions to the panel. Very briefly, the acknowledgements we won't restate, but to be clear on the funding sources for the respective consortia we're discussing today. And a disclaimer, as standard, that all views expressed here are for the individual, represent the individuals and not any of their respective organizations or employers. So, the Getting Better Together initiative update. So we're going to cover as I said, a very brief introduction to the eCOA Consortium, and then talk about the various statuses of the waves of the Getting Better Together collaboration, and exactly where we're thinking of going with the collaboration going forward. So on the eCOA Consortium, very briefly, established as the PRO Consortium in 2011, c-path managing and overseeing and administering the activities of the consortium with 17 other member firms at this time, hoping to get a few more in the very near future. There's 17 at this stage, and are really looking at those providers delivering both services and also technologies for the capture of PRO and COA data electronically. And we changed our name at the beginning of this year to more accurately reflect, based on the expression of the actual member firms themselves, the capabilities of the members of the firm, and also our interest in the general direction of the consortium. And what we're really looking to deliver is to advance the science of clinical trial endpoint assessment through collaboration on research, education, and pivotally, development and dissemination of best practice recommendations for the electronic capture of COA data. So our membership, many familiar names here, I'm sure, some of which are on the call today, all ranging from the major global CROs to smaller entities that have come from a more disease management, healthcare type space, but all having very significant interests and activities and scope within the eCOA space. What we've got going on right now in terms of active work, literally just come off a meeting looking at what I think is a very important piece of work to update those best practice recommendations for the migration of COA measures from paper to electronic methods. Really looking to just maybe supplement the outstanding work that my c-path colleagues and others on the call today have done in terms of trying to guide the wider clinical development community on the best migration practices, adding the newer technologies and making sure that we have guidance available for those, but also to centralize that work. So we have one definitive reference point for the clinical development community to look for, to point at for guidance on migration. The other very active project at the moment is the eCOA Systems and Conformité Européenne, which is the CE mark, where many of us have heard or will see on our devices, and examining where eCOA systems would be in scope for self-certification for the CE mark. And we're looking to generate a self-publish a white paper on that, hopefully have that done by the end of the summer. In the planning phase, we've got one particularly interesting and exciting project, which is kind of relevant very much for the session that will follow this, around the practical considerations for the implementation of wearables in clinical trials. Based on experience our members have had of using digital health technologies to deliver eCOA systems and otherwise, but applying that very specifically to wearable devices. And also BYOD is something we'll talk about quite a bit today and continue a discussion that we want to try and make sure that we're doing the very best we can to enhance the uptake of that particular approach of using participants' own devices. Potential projects that are on the table, we're not committed to yet, but we're looking at method standardization for remote assessment of particular conditions. Dermatology is an example. Something we're looking at in collaboration with the PRO Consortium, and it's something that would logically fall under the scope of FDA's iSTAND, or Innovative Science and Technology Approaches for New Drugs pilot program. And also general method standardization for assessing wearable compliance. Again, wearables, we've got a great session for that coming up in the next hour or so. It's where we can collaborate again with the PRO Consortium to look at how we standardize assessment and even description of adherence where wearables are involved in clinical trials. That's where we are within the consortium, specifically what we're looking at and where we're going. A couple of recent publications fanfare for you. The publication very recently, back in February, of measurement comparability of electronic and paper administration of visual analog scales, TIERS, published that in February. And also a project I know was a long time coming, delivering best practice recommendations for user acceptance testing for systems and clinical outcome assessment data capture. Collaboration again with the PRO Consortium, and that was published at the beginning of last month to much fanfare internally and otherwise. So let's talk specifically, we're at the PRO Consortium workshop about how the collaboration exists between the eCOA Consortium and the PRO Consortium. The Getting Better Together initiative was initiated in 2019, and what it intends to be is that kind of neutral, pre-competitive, collaborative space where c-path ourselves, clinical trial sponsors that are members of the PRO Consortium, the providers that are members of the eCOA Consortium, and also FDA and regulators and CROs as well. FDA specifically being the only regulator that contributed at this stage. And the aims and the objectives here are really to get to the root of those issues that are obstacles and create issues for eCOA implementation in clinical trials, driving that positive and lasting change to the benefit of all stakeholders. So there was a structure put together to try and oversee not least the identification of projects, but also the progress and also the general oversight of the outputs of the respective projects. Every member firm representative across each of the contributing consortia is allowed to bring topics to the table. They are discussed as what you could see is a core leadership team. The core leadership team is formed from c-path representatives ourselves, members of the PRO Consortium's eCOA subcommittee, and also members of the eCOA Consortium. And they're fixed seats, which very recently we formalized to be 2 representatives from each, along with the respective industry co-directors. But the different addition here with the core leadership team is the role of project liaison, and these individuals report into the leadership team, interacting with the assigned project team leaders for each of the topics that are being investigated under the Getting Better Together initiative. And we can give you a bit of a stronger sense of what that's looking like right now. We'll go through some of the past, active and upcoming work. As we said, the initiative is split into a series of waves. We're in wave 2 right now. Wave 3 is on the horizon, but some projects are still ongoing. The very first output, and I think actually the first 2 projects or topics that output under wave 1 were about the same time, well before I joined the organization, but under leadership of Paul O'Donoghue for Medidata and Megan Turner for GSK and Lisa Nguyen from Medivante, we've developed a standardized eCOA lexicon, which is intended to basically provide a dictionary, the lexicon for the common terminology that we could use across all stakeholders, site staff, regulators, sponsors, eCOA providers, and essentially trying to just reduce the issues of miscommunication and misinterpretation and the inefficiencies that result. So that is already delivered now, most recently on version 2. Version 3 is upcoming in the very near future. Work will begin on that in the summer. And that probably a project that will last a very significant amount of time after that as we continue to expand the interface that we have with different terminologies. And that searchable PDF is available on the PRO Consortium and the eCOA Consortium web pages. Topic 2, eCOA process workflow on roles and responsibilities, led by Kate Zaza at Genentech. Defining that standardized eCOA workflow and identifying and getting consensus agreement on respective responsibilities and roles within eCOA strategies, but also tactical implementations on a study level. The final documents were posted to the c-path website in February 2021. And even now we're looking at just a review of that output just to see if it's still current and might need some updating or refreshing. Topic 3 is, as we mentioned a moment ago, we're pleased to have the manuscript published in tiers last month as an output from the UAT best practices topic. Topic 4 is a project I've gotten very heavily involved with since I joined the organization almost a year ago now. Best practice recommendations for ePRO dataset structure and standardization. We've benefited from some very substantial input from my colleagues at FDA, along with contributors from either consortium. And also, we've had some good input from other entities, analytic vendors. We've had CDISC very much involved in helping what is obviously a very logical connection to the core of their work. And also, we've had the opportunity to make this a more broader, expansive opportunity for people and different roles to contribute to. This manuscript is in a very good place. We're just finalizing the different contributors. Hopefully we're going to get FDA formally recognized for their vital contribution they've made, and hopefully we'll have that submitted, or we will have that submitted in this quarter of 2022. Topic 5, again, a project that has stimulated some quite a substantial debate. It seems quite a narrow topic, but the concepts of this topic, this project addresses and covers are substantial. Again, a manuscript that's in a very advanced place under the strong leadership of Trish DeLong from Janssen and Demian in particular at Clario, looking to develop those best practices for handling eCOA data change requests. This is a project that, again, in terms of the collaboration mindset, which is central to how we operate, we've reached out and connected with the eClinical Forum, who have some crossover between the respective organizations, but we've got a really broad base of experience and perspectives for how we've managed eCOA data changes. It's been a really stimulating and informative and educational process to be part of this. We were able to deliver a webinar in both time zones, US and Europe, in December last year, and we'll be looking to put on a public webinar when the manuscript is done. And we are, to use a term we've adopted within the project team, we are dangerously close to having this one done. So moving on to Wave 2, the active projects we have, the first of which launched in January last year. Unfortunately, very recently, our project liaison, Linda Nelson from GSK, stepped away due to other commitments, but we've got some strong leadership in Valdo Arnera, and in particular, Andriana Athanasiou, from Janssen, who have continued to drive this project forward, which is really looking at accommodate and show sensitivity and adaptability in terms of flexible approaches for when we capture PRO data electronically, and looking at that from a multi-stakeholder perspective, really looking at what we can do for clinical trial participants and what we can do for sites in particular. That's broken into 3 different work streams. We've administered a number of surveys to try and develop a sense of perspectives from our various stakeholders, and including a survey most recently of measure owner developers last year to look at the barriers to process that the workstream can hopefully try and address. And the manuscript is our target, hopefully by the end of the year. And BYOD, as I said at the head of this little section, is a particularly strong area of interest for both the consortia and those with a strong eCOA systems interest. The eCOA Consortium Industry Co-Director, Shelley Steele, is serving as project liaison on that, and very ably supported by Carl McAvoy from Y-Prime and Lisa Charlton from Science 37. The intention is to develop best practice recommendations for the implementation of BYOD. That split into 2 work streams to investigate different components of whether BYOD is right and what the regulatory and the equivalence, perspective and impact of use of BYOD is. We were able just last week to publish and go live with our podcast, which is essentially details a discussion of where we've been looking with this project and where we want to go. And that's available for you to be accessed on the respective consortia web pages. And the manuscript development was started just a couple of weeks ago and is making good progress already, with an intention again at the end of Q3 to have this out there and providing a more compelling evidence for why BYOD just makes so much sense. Upcoming Wave 2 topics, the first of which has generated a lot of excitement, eCOA translations and the licensing management process associated with them. We're looking and hopeful that we'll be able to partner with the ISOQOL Translations and Cultural Adaptation Special Interest Group, TCA-SIG. That process is ongoing at the moment, looking to launch that process, the whole project rather, before the end of this quarter. This is a perpetual, permanent for me pain point in my experience in 17 years or so years of eCOA oversight and implementation, and we're hoping to get some real good, useful guidance here. We're going to examine data management in the context of eCOA, and particularly roles and responsibilities, which can vary significantly with implementations, and then examine in depth site readiness and training, something that's evolved quite a bit over the course of the recent pandemic, and something that's building on prior work at the 2019 DIA forum. And proposed projects coming up in the pipeline. As you can see, we've got a lot of work to do together. RFPs, as everyone will be aware of, who's interfaced with the eCOA systems, there's different approaches to take. What commonality can we draw? Design requirements, standardizing how we ask providers and how we document requirements for the systems that we require from providers. Data transfers, that might slip into the data management piece, but we're really looking at all the administration as well as the operational aspects of data transfer and managing that process. eCOA compliance thresholds are particularly interesting in the context of risk-based oversight and monitoring of clinical trials and how different sponsors are using that. And also optimization and efficiencies really around the deployment stage of getting the systems active. Another piece that we're going to be looking at in some depth. All resources that we published and future resources are available from the respective consortia web pages, the links of which are provided here. And if you access those pages and find the eCOA initiative tab, which is highlighted, everything that we generate under the initiative will be posted there. So thank you for your attention. If you have any more further interest in any questions, any inquiries around the eCOA Consortium specifically, or the Getting Better Together initiative, please don't hesitate to drop myself and Christian a line, and we will get back to you as soon as possible.